Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Masterclass. We are joined today by a friend of mine, Mark Maiocca. He is in the mortgage business. He is an author, and he's going to be sharing with us how to leverage relationships with other professionals to basically not just grow our business, but to grow their business and ultimately have this, sphere of people that are feeding each other business back and forth. So we're going to hear a little bit about his story, how he got into the business, writing his book, and he's going to share a bunch of value regarding how you can actually leverage those relationships. So Mark, welcome.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it, man. You got it. So I guess tell us a little bit about your background regarding how you got into the mortgage business.
Well, I got into the mortgage business in 1997, pretty much by accident, like most mortgage people. I was out in Arizona, which I only lived there for 5 months, but I had a cousin out there who introduced me to the mortgage business, and that's kind of how it started. I just needed a job, and he said, come check this out. It worked out.
Awesome. Now, are you on more the residential side, commercial side, both?
All residential. Commercial and residential are pretty much different animals. So if I have a commercial, I know enough to be dangerous, but I'll refer it off to my commercial specialist.
I hear you. I hear it. Now, share with me, a few of the different ways that you've built your business over the years. So regarding, are you just getting referrals from, friends and family? Are you doing any online stuff? Are you working with other professionals? Like, how are you actually getting referrals into your business?
That's a great question. Well, I started in the beginning with friends and family and my database. And I strictly at first just went for real estate agents. So I had 20 or 30 real estate agents and people I knew. So I was running around like crazy.
Awesome. And how has that transformed over the years?
Well, I still work with realtors, obviously, and my database, but I work with a smaller group, and I've added financial advisors, accountants, and I take a little bit more of a holistic approach to getting a mortgage than just getting the deal done. It's just I've kind of grown that way.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, you had shared a story with me the last time we spoke, specifically about your father, which I guess, given those circumstances, had really shined a light on the importance of what we as financial advisors do. If you'd be comfortable sharing that story, I think the audience would love to hear it.
All right. Well, in 1986, and this is before I knew anything about financial anything. So
Yeah.
my dad passed away of cancer. It was very unexpected. He got diagnosed. 6 weeks later, he was gone, and he had no life insurance. And it really, they were doing really well at the time. We had a house in Newton, we had a house down the Cape. They had a thriving business. I was a senior in high school. My sister was, I forget what grade, but she was 10. And it kind of really, rocked our world a little bit. And my mother kept it together. But everything went great. But we basically had our fortune was gone. And the ironic thing about it was my mom and dad sold insurance for a living. They sold property and casualty insurance agents. So it was your classic case of the cobbler's kids have no shoes. They
Right.
just didn't plan for that, and that one little hole in their financial picture kind of shook everything. So that was my introduction to the full holistic approach.
So you as a mortgage professional, I guess, how are you making sure to help your customers, your clients avoid similar circumstances, even though it's not what you do specifically?
Great question. So I sort of just kind of tell it up front. The first thing I say to most clients is, I take a different approach than most mortgage originators. I want to make sure the mortgage you select is integrated into your overall financial plan. And the first thing I'll say is, how's your relationship with your financial advisor?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I started out. And from there, it usually opens up into a few questions: how the mortgage, how they structure the mortgage, how much they put down, all those different things can fit into their goals for the future.
Awesome. And then obviously for, licensing purposes, right, you can sort of probe and ask questions, but, you can't help them execute on some of those financial planning products and services and things like that. I guess, how are you encouraging them and getting them to sit down with an advisor or their advisor, if they already have one, to actually walk through all this stuff? Do you find that to be difficult? Is it easy?
It's easy. When I'm doing the mortgage, they typically want to talk about the mortgage, so it's not so easy to push.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple different points in the process that I do it. Number one, when they get pre-approved, I recommend that they speak to an advisor to kind of look into their cash flow a little deeper. As a mortgage person, I use debt to income ratios and what's on the credit report, but that's not really factoring in their lifestyle expenses and what their goals are in the future. So I always recommend that. And it's not doesn't need to be a full-blown cash flow analysis because they're a little bit overwhelmed. It's more just a quick talk with an advisor to kind of ask some good questions and build rapport. So when they need that advisor for some questions that I'm not qualified to answer, they have a resource.
Awesome. Now, so you wrote a book. I want to segue into some of the practical stuff that our advisors here can go out and implement. So you wrote a book called "What's Your Rate?" And the premise behind that title you had shared with me is that, a lot of times that's the only question that we'll ask, right? Us as advisors is, we find out that they have, a mortgage or something like that. We'll, say, hey, what's your rate, right? And if they share, call it in the low threes, given the current market conditions, we're like, oh, great, you're all set, right?
Right.
But it seems like there's more behind that. But I guess share with me before we get into that nitty gritty, what motivated you to write a book?
Well, that's a great question. I never actually thought of it as a quick answer. So give me some rope here.
Yeah.
A lot of it was hard for me to I wanted a better way to convey to my business partners how I worked and also to my clients how I worked. And, sometimes when they would come to talk to me, they don't want to hear everything right there. So I wanted something to be able to give to them that really conveyed my whole process from start to finish. So that's kind of how it started. I wanted to show them, hey, I'm going to do your mortgage. I'm going to give you the best rate I can,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so much more to it. The lowest rate with the wrong program and structure can be more expensive in the long run than a good financial plan.
Right. Now, so let's dig into that book a little bit. So I know in that book, you walk through what a lot of us refer to as COI relationships, center of influence. Some other people call it, spheres of influence. Basically, it's a group of people that can basically feed business back and forth to each other in order to help their clients as best as they can and be that connector, so to speak. So I guess in your belief, based on the book that you wrote and based on how you sort of practice that, what professionals should be in that circle? Let's start there.
Well, we call it the core 7, and
Okay.
It's the realtor, the mortgage originator, the real estate attorney or escrow officer in some states, the financial advisor, the accountant, the estate planning attorney, and the property and casualty insurance agent.
Awesome. Who do you think, I guess, out of all those people, who's sort of like the quarterback of that? Who's the one that's sort of managing the various aspects, do you think?
I think it's the financial advisor 100%. And it's funny you say quarterback because we have a joke. We always say, the financial advisor is definitely the quarterback, but be careful that they're not the coach of the team. Everybody does their one little role. And I feel the financial advisor's job is to kind of make sure everybody's navigating in the right way for the client. But sometimes in certain aspects, seems like the financial advisor is so controlling of the client that the whole holistic plan isn't in place. And that was my only part of, quarterback, run the show, but just let everyone work together in their own system.
Awesome. Now, so for our advisors who either haven't even thought about, I guess, establishing these types of relationships, let's say, a lot of us have like these pseudo relationships where it's like, yeah, I kind of got a guy over here, I got a girl over here, that does that, but it's not really like a deep relationship. There's not a lot of strategy behind it, or they just may not be doing it all together. So I'm curious to know, based on some of the principles that you've wrote about, how do you just begin establishing those relationships?
It's kind of easy. Uh, Obviously the advisor has, we kind of break it up into the real estate portion and the finances portion. And the advisor usually brings with them a good estate planning attorney, a good accountant, and a good P&C agent. And I feel, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, I feel if an advisor is doing their job the way they're supposed to, those relationships are going to be in place. Those are necessary in order to create a real financial plan.
So I agree, but let's talk to maybe some of the advisors who are newer in the business or maybe haven't established those relationships. So like do we just like pick up the phone and call like the local CPA, or how are we actually qualifying those people and figuring out if they're going to be a good fit for, your clients?
Oh, great question. It's easy to meet them. That's what I thought you were getting. It's easy to find them on LinkedIn or talk to
Right.
somebody, but you do need a really good set of questions to ask. What's important about, working with your clients? What's your process like? Like, I believe that, like, for example, as a financial advisor and a mortgage originator, I never step on the advisor's toes. They have their process, they run through it, but I like to know that process as clear as possible just to convey it a little bit. I think each professional should understand, every professional in the seven should understand their process so that they can speak to it. They don't have to
Right.
sell it, but just talk about what's going to happen next.
Awesome.
And
Now,
that's huge.
so when you do identify those people, I think what you're getting at is it's easy to find them. Obviously, I think referrals are the best. Like, hey, who do you know in this space that like, and trust? But you're saying that when you actually get together with them, you should almost sort of like interview them a little bit, to understand what their process is, what their personality is, if you guys enjoy each other, maybe even if they already have a pre-existing, call it referral relationship with
Right.
someone in your field, maybe that's not the best person, to partner with, or maybe you can win them over, right, over time. So what are some of the, I guess, systems in place that you have to manage those relationships? Do you meet with each professional individually? Do you get together in groups? If so, how often? What's covered in those things? Like how are they actually, or excuse me, how are you actually managing those relationships to drum up business?
Great question. So we have what we call a mastermind meeting
Okay.
once a month. So 7 of us meet and we talk about we have a system of how everyone does things. So we kind of just follow that format. There's a lot of really straight talk, like, how many people did you pre-approve this month, Mark? How'd you do with that cash flow cross sell? How'd it go? So I'm kind of accountable to the advisor where I'm saying, hey, this one had somebody, this one said no, this one should have contacted you, but typically I introduce by email so they would know. And we go through just those steps in the meeting. And then we have 2 one-on-one partnership planning sessions, which can be phone calls, but they're just 15 minutes where we go through a series of, questions, which are basically, how can I do better? What would you like me to do more of? What should I stop doing?
Mm-hmm.
That way, it really can improve the relationship step by step. And it's just from there, it's worked pretty good.
Now, so I know on the surface, and you and I have talked about this before, and I know that there's some difference or different nuances, but I want you to help sort of describe that. So on the surface, it seems like, I've been a part of them before. I'm sure other people who are listening who have been a part of them before, which is like the BNI groups.
Yeah.
Right. The BNI groups have, professionals ranging from, advisors and mortgage professionals to, the local, barbershop, right, and everything in between. So what, based on the setup that you recommend, obviously size is a big difference, but what else is different? What sets it apart from, say, a BNI group?
Great question. It's only for the seven
Yep.
professionals that work together. So we stay focused on that. There's a little bit more accountability because there's a methodology to it. Like, for example, when I'm talking to a client, obviously if they ask me for a referral, I can give a referral out to any of the seven. But where my focus is the financial advisor, number one,
Mm-hmm.
and the property and casualty insurance agent. So my goal when talking to a client is obviously to do my job as a mortgage originator, but I'm asking the important, how does it fit into your financial plan? And all I'm really looking to do is make an introduction to my financial advisor partner, because I know from there, they're going to get an introduction to the estate planning attorney to do the will, the healthcare proxy.
Mm-hmm.
If taxes are involved, the accountant's going to be brought in for the expertise. And the P&C agent's always there for, protecting the assets with the umbrella. So my goal is getting it to the advisor. And each one of the seven kind of has similar systems like that we track specifically.
Awesome. And it seems like it's a group of people, A, because it's smaller, and B, because you guys, like, it's tough, for example, to get a referral from, again, I'll use the barber as an example, because like they don't come across, potential clients all the time, but in our professions, there's a lot of cross-pollination. But what it sounds like is where it differs from, say, BNI is there's accountability involved.
Yes.
Where it's like, hey, it's not like tiptoeing around each other being like, oh, well, I gave them a referral last month and they haven't gotten it back to me yet, and kind of, again, walking on eggshells. It's like, no, you guys are more so like business partners, where it's, hey, it's not that we're calling each other out to be able to get more business for ourselves. It's no, we're helping each other grow their business, right? And if someone isn't pulling their weight, it's going to ultimately affect their bottom line and, the rest of the groups as well. So it sounds like there's an accountability message that is involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the way it's designed is, if one person isn't doing what they're supposed to do, it does affect the whole group.
Mm-hmm.
So there's times where it will be lopsided, where someone's not really pulling their weight. And it's designed so that we can have just some candid, friendly conversations. Like, for example, if the financial advisor, you could look at me and say, Mark, you did 10 closings this month. I know you're supposed to have that closing introduction that you do. What's going on with that? Because I haven't talked to anybody yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I can say, you know what, David, I've really been slacking. I'm sorry. I haven't executed. I'll get back to doing that. It's helpful. It doesn't mean it has to be perfect, but there's specific things that we can kind of hold each other accountable to make sure we get the right result.
Awesome. So, so I want to dive a little bit deeper into the group setup. So in that 7-person meeting, is that an hour? Is it 30 minutes? Is it a couple hours? Is it half a day? Is it over beers? Is it more professional setting? And through the agenda, it's basically sharing pipeline. I've caught on so far, right? Sharing each other's pipelines, or past closings. I guess, can you go into a little bit more detail there?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we have the meeting, the way it breaks down is the first part of the meeting, we kind of have a set of principles, which is everything that you've talked about, just keeping everybody in line. The second part is we talk about what's new and positive, but then we call it.
Sorry to cut you off, but new and positive in like their personal businesses, or like industry in general, like, hey, interest rates are going down, or hey, interest rates are going up, or hey, we have, this new insurance or investment product over here. Is that what you're sharing?
Anything like that. I have a new assistant that I'm really excited about, or just anything. We like to keep it positive so that it doesn't turn into one of those venting sessions about the client from hell and all that stuff.
Right.
But also it's who do I want to meet? So I'll give you an example. because this kind of talks about how the seven work together in an abundant mentality.
Mm-hmm.
The P&C agent looked over at me, the mortgage guy, and said, listen, I need more mortgage people to network with and do homeowners insurance. Do
Yeah.
you know anybody that you could help? And I introduced them to 6 of my friends in the industry. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, if he does well, I'm going to do well. And I know I'm going to get credit for helping. The second reason is because he's not really a primary referral target for me. Like the referrals from a P&C agent to a mortgage person are really, they don't come at the right time. They're not that warm. They're usually, a little colder than normal.
More so just kind of building up your audience, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we have the tracking where we kind of really go around the table, make sure everybody's kind of following it. Then we have what we call the hot seat. One person each week sits down and really gets grilled by the whole group. I say grilled, but it's really not like that. It's all just, to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And
now, is that like helping like with their business, or what's that like?
Well, it's based on 3 questions. It's, what am I doing that you'd like me to do more of? What am I doing that you'd like me to stop? And how can I improve? And we just kind of go from there.
So you're focusing on not just growing each other's business, but growing each other's involvement with the group itself, and to basically learn how to be great networkers.
Right. I'll give you a quick example on that. The real estate agent, one of the things I said is I'd like you to refer the people to me a little bit earlier, so I have time to do a full, half-hour consultation to really get into what I need. This agent was doing a great job referring, but they were referring like the day before an offer. So I was just kind of moving quickly to get, the financing in place instead of really finding out what was important to that client.
Right.
Then we have a section for a guest, and then we just have the one-on-ones assigned. So it would be like, later that month, the advisor and me would talk about, any specific thing like the closing cross-sell or the mortgage review, which is a great way to really make it happen, is each, reviewing the mortgage. Sometimes it's, rates are up, you can't refinance, but what are your 2 to 10 year goals involving your financial planning? What are your 2 to 10 year real estate goals? It gets into those conversations which create the introductions. And the bottom line is the client benefits. It's not like you're just dishing off referrals to help everyone in the group. I mean,
right.
The client is protected. And that's where that story of my family came in, where I know, you can be doing great and have one piece of your finances that's not in place. And if the wrong thing happens, it can crush you.
Awesome. Yeah. It's definitely more, if more than one professional is recommending someone to do something and take action on something, typically they'll do it. Especially when someone like you, right, who from an insurance and investment standpoint, right, you're not licensed to be compensated. So it's like, hey, if you're saying, hey, you should probably do X, Y, and Z, right, and they know you're not compensated on that, they kind of take that recommendation sometimes a little bit more seriously, because they know that you're not telling them to do it just so that you can, make your money.
I agree. Absolutely.
So when you look at your, I just want to give some people a vision as we start wrapping up, is figuring out, okay, like when you look at your total revenue and the business that you do on an annual basis, what would you say, what percentage of your business comes from, referrals outside of the core 7? And what percentage would you say comes from within the core 7?
It's about, I'd say 60-40. 40 comes from the 2 core 7 groups that I have, and the other part comes from my database and a few real estate agents who really, they're not really interested in, forming anything like that. They just want to,
just pass off referrals. Yeah. Awesome. So almost half your business is coming from these things, which is pretty cool. Awesome. And then, so you're working on, I know when we spoke before, you were just wrapping up a course on basically how to establish this group, right? Yeah. For yourself, and how to identify them, how to actually structure the meetings, talking points, accountability items, things along those lines. Is that course live yet? You wrapping that up shortly? Where are you at status wise, just so the audience knows?
It is live. We're making some tweaks at this point, but it's live and it's at mycore7.com.
mycore7.com.
The number 7.com.
Awesome. Awesome. So we'll check that out. And for those of you who are listening in, if you have any questions, I know that the group is meant just for financial advisors. However, I do allow people like Mark to be a part of the group as well, who are guests. That way, when this video airs, if you have specific questions for Mark, I'm sure, you'd be willing to answer some questions that come up in the comments. So if you have questions either on the course of how to develop this group on your own, or any questions about this mastermind today, or excuse me, masterclass today, obviously just put it in the comments. I'll tag Mark in the post so he'll get notified as people comment on it. And then if you're able to provide some value, Mark, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Of course. And thanks for coming on. And until next week, but enjoy your Friday, everyone. And we will tune in tomorrow for Strategic Saturday.